All right, a little bit of a switch up here on college football Saturday. We are expecting Steve Sarkisian. Instead, it's Nick Saban live at
really
home.
Proud of our players and our coaches. I think everybody really stepped up and, did a really, really good job today. I think the energy was good. The offense made a lot of explosive plays out there. Defense really played well. It's just a great team win. I can't really explain it. I mean, this is an unusual circumstance for me to be in, to be watching from afar, to see our team play from afar, win the game. They were excited after the game. They were very happy, that they could go out there and do a great job in this game, playing at home. Last home game for a lot of the seniors. I'm sure the players wanted to do a good job for them, and I'm really happy for our seniors and the great contribution that they've made, in their career here. And it's great for them to win the last game in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I think our coaching staff did a marvelous job today. They played the situations. We had a good plan. They stayed with the plan. They executed the plan. Sark did a nice job of managing things. I sat here and felt a little helpless, that I could see things and, yell at things and listen to Miss Terry cheer downstairs. It's a little different, but still feels good to win. So I'm happy for our fans who support us. I know this is a big game for a lot of the people who support us, and it's just a great win for us. So I'm sure there's a lot of things that we could learn from this game, lessons that we'll learn and grow from and get better. That's something that you always want to focus on this time of year, that your team continues to improve and get better, because, each game you play is a little more on the line. So it's really important that you can execute and play with consistency. And that's something that we'll have to strive for, in these next games that we have coming up here.
Okay, guys, like I said, if you want to ask questions, please use the raise your hand function. We will start with Michael Casagrande.
Yeah, Nick, just wondering, how many of those true in-game decisions did Steve have to make in his new role today?
I didn't think there was a lot. I didn't think there was a lot of those, real tough situations that came up. A couple times that, we made it on third down that we might have gone for it on fourth down. And but those decisions really didn't really come up. But I thought he was well prepared for, what he needed to do. And, I think he did a really good job.
Okay, we'll go to Brett Hudson with the Tuscaloosa News.
Yeah, Coach, how have you seen your pass rush grow and develop over the last few weeks to get to the point where they can affect Bo Nix like this?
Well, I think that our entire defense has kind of, improved and gelled, together as a unit. All 11 guys playing better. I think we play a little better in the back end and what we were playing in the beginning. I think we've got a little better pass rush. I think we're using more players, now, which I think, enhances everybody's opportunities to have a role and be able to go out there and contribute. So, we made a couple of mistakes in the secondary that could have been really costly. The guy drops the ball when he's 20 yards behind everybody, in the second quarter, which was a bust on defense. And, there's a couple others on third down that we needed to get off the field on and didn't because of a couple mental errors. But, Auburn does a really, really good job offensively. They use a lot of formations, a lot of motions. You really have to be on your toes in terms of how you adjust. And sometimes, for the most part, we did a really good job, but we made a couple errors that, helped them make some plays, especially on third down.
We'll go to Chris Walsh.
Which was tougher for you today, not being on the headset or not being there for the pregame ceremony with the seniors and their families?
Well, I think, that's a tough one. I think both are equally difficult to deal with when you're a coach and you have so much respect and admiration for this senior class and all that they've accomplished and all that they've done. But, this is one of the best classes of people, I think, that, we've ever had. Great leadership, really good character. They've inspired and impacted a lot of other guys on our team in a really positive way. I think they're all going to graduate, so we're really proud of them for that. And I'm sure they're going to go on and be great ambassadors for the University of Alabama as well and have success in life because of who they are. And hopefully some of the lessons that they learned while they were here will help them be more successful in life. But that was difficult. And then, not being there for the game. The Iron Bowl was such a great competitive venue that means so much to so many people. Man, it was really hard, especially the fact that I feel great. But I did what I could do to help prepare the team throughout the week. I was involved in everything that we could do, right up till 90 minutes before the game. And, then we just had to sit and watch from afar. So, but I think, the training and the discipline that you develop in people, carries over, whether you're there with them or not. I mean, no different than your kids. If you train your kids well and they make really good choices and decisions, you can trust them to go out and do it even when you're not around. So I think that speaks volumes for the character on our team and the leadership that we have that helps inspire everybody on the team to play with that kind of competitive character.
We'll go with Aaron Settles.
Nick, certainly Malachi Moore is not a finished product yet, but in terms of when sort of the light went on from him, when did you see that? Because he's been playing with a lot of confidence lately.
Yeah, well, I think that early in the season, we saw a lot of stuff. Missouri, Ole Miss, those games were really tough for the defensive players, especially the young ones. They saw about everything that, you could see from a formation and adjustment standpoint, but I think they learned a lot from it. And I think Malachi is the kind of guy that, he might make a mistake once, but when he learns, he's smart. He gets it right the next time. So the cumulative effect of those experiences, I think, has made him a lot more confident. And he's played really, really well for us. And I'm sure that he'll continue to improve, but we're certainly pleased with the progress that he's made to this point.
We'll go with Cecil Hurt.
Coach, obviously you had done some LSU prep earlier, but it's a quick turnaround for, I guess, a different, or at least a opponent you didn't know you were playing until Friday. Will it be a tough week of preparation because of that?
No, I really don't think so, because we actually practiced for them 3 days, 1 day in the bye week, and then on Monday and Tuesday when we thought we were going to play, and the game got canceled. So we actually had 3 days of work with them. Not that players are going to immediately sort of recall all that stuff, but because we've had some experience with that, I think that'll be beneficial in, to how we put the plan together. I think it's important this time of year. Look, this would normally have been the 12th game of the season, and we're still going to have 2 games left. And if we're fortunate enough to have success in those games, a 3rd game in the SEC championship and maybe more after that. So I think, we really got to try to take care of our team a little bit in terms of how we practice and how they recover and how we move forward with our team. So this is going to be a big game for us at LSU. It always is. They have a lot of really good players, and I don't care what their record is. They have a lot of talented guys. We thought that, when we were preparing for them before. So I don't feel like this is going to be an abnormal week for us.
Okay, we'll finish up with Joseph Goodman from AL.com.
Hey, Nick. 2 questions. First, what were the circumstances when you were yelling at the TV?
When did you see me yell at the TV?
Oh, at the beginning in your opening statement, you mentioned yelling.
I think I did yell at the TV a couple times today. A couple times when we made some mistakes in coverage, a couple times when we missed some tackles, a couple times when Mac didn't throw the ball to the guy I thought he should have thrown it to. So I guess it was more than a couple. But I would like to ask you a question, because I don't know where you got your get up there, but I sure would like to get one like that. All that matching mask and yellow and gold. It looks good, man. It really looks classy. I like that look.
Well, there's a backstory to that. Maybe we can talk about it. Speaking of backstories, could you fill me in on the elephant head behind you? What's the story there?
You have to talk to Miss Terry about that. She's a decorator in the house, and I'm actually in what we call our recruiting room. So this is the room that we actually added on to the house when we came here, so that when we had recruits and their parents, that we would have a room large enough that we could have 60, 70 people and, have breakfast and, a little line dancing at night, little shoot pool, little, play cards, develop relationships. So if you could see the whole room, there's quite a bit of Alabama paraphernalia around and lots of pictures that represent, a lot of positive things that have happened here, whether they're trips to the White House or receiving national championship trophies. And I guess that elephant's just a symbol of who we are at Alabama.
All right, Coach. Thank you for the time, guys. That's all we've got. We'll have players here shortly. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Chris Brees, Simone Eli here on the postgame show. Our producer Joey was telling us in our ear, that was the best Nick Saban postgame press conference ever.
Yeah, he was so relaxed and so fun there in that last question, showing a lot of personality, and that's the Saban that we love to see. Even joking about how he's yelled at the television throughout the game. That was awesome.
2 takeaways from Nick Saban there. Number 1, Miss Terry didn't watch the game with him. I don't know if she wasn't allowed or if she didn't want to. Or
probably both.
She probably didn't want to.
Probably both.
And number 2, somebody missed a golden opportunity to put a camera on Nick Saban. Could you imagine him pacing back and forth and yelling at the screen and that last question? It was just fantastic. That would be a good about a 20-minute docuseries you could do.
Would have been fantastic, but I'm not sure he would have allowed it. For me, the takeaways, I think he truly had a difficult time being away from the game. He talked about the competitive atmosphere in the Iron Bowl, which he's been a part of for more than a decade now. Just really difficult for him to be away from the game. And then, of course, it being senior night. For the seniors, a handful of them, their last game in Bryant-Denny Stadium, he recorded about a 4-minute video message that they posted on social media and then showed on the big screen for the senior players. And I think that was hard, too, for him to be away from those guys that he's had for 4+ years and to not be able to celebrate with them.
We were expecting Steve Sarkisian. Nick Saban ends up doing it from his place at home, and it looks like we will not hear from Sarkisian. It'll be players coming up here momentarily. We have a lot to get to here on the postgame show. Stay with us.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Trio on that left side. Jones got it to Devontae Smith. Open field. One man to beat. You can forget about it.
Every week it's something different for Devontae Smith. This time it was putting away his biggest rival. Alabama up by a couple of scores early third quarter. Not anymore. 28-6 was the score there. It all put Auburn away. And Smith has been fantastic. 144 yards and a touchdown in 5 of his last 6 games. The fans are exiting Bryant-Denny Stadium. After being a 25-point favorite, the way the game went was about what they thought it would do. Welcome into the postgame show on College Football Saturday. Chris Brees, Simone Eli. We saw Nick Saban zoom from home, and the way Alabama played every single facet. We've seen this so many times this year that this team is nothing like last year's team was at all.
They came out firing on all cylinders. Mac Jones misfired a couple times in the first series there, but then once they settled down, of course, the hype of the Iron Bowl, when that offense settled down, they were unstoppable in the air, on the ground. Auburn's defense had absolutely no answer for them all night.
You know things are going really well for your program when you're nitpicking about the first drive of the game and your quarterback misses a few throws. And that's the way Alabama felt in 2018 when Tua Tagovailoa was the quarterback. It was, okay, what can we get better at on every side of the ball? And you get to the point where you're saying, okay, well, there's nothing to get better at. You beat yourselves. Now, Alabama didn't win the national title in 2018. You got to think Clemson and Ohio State are 2 teams who could compete with them. But I'm looking at this top 25, and I don't know if there's anybody who would be within a 4, 5, 6 point spread of Alabama right now.
For the 21st straight game, 21 games in a row, Alabama has scored 35 or more points. I mean, that's incredible. There are teams in the SEC who haven't scored 35 points more than once in a season. They've done it for 21 straight games. That's absolute dominance, and different quarterbacks at that. I mean, just unbelievable effort from Alabama.
Well, Auburn knew it would be a daunting task to go into Bryant-Denny Stadium and really make this a game, especially since Alabama's been rolling so much. There was one glimmer of hope. Steve Sarkisian was the head coach, per se, in the game, still calling the plays, and Mac Jones and Devontae Smith. You saw the 28 score there early on. This was the first one, 7-0.
Yeah, the SEC's leading touchdown reception guy right there, just adding to that record even more. And Alabama's offense, unbelievable in the air. Mac Jones knew exactly what he was doing. Check out this play design by Sark. Unbelievable. The pass there to John Mechie puts Alabama up 14-0 early in the second quarter, and it was on.
Nobody does the RPO like Alabama does. So many teams are jealous of that. And it was John Mechie, it was Devontae Smith, and Jaleel Billingsley getting in. Jalen Waddle, he's injured. They miss him, yeah, but they don't need him. That's the thing.
Let me take this next highlight, okay? This is my guy right here. Bo Nix, Auburn actually driving. He's going to underthrow his man, and Hewitt Trussville standout. Malachi Moore makes a great play on the ball. The true freshman, his 4th interception on the year.
What is it, hashtag Husky Fast?
I love that kid, man.
Well, Najee Harris is almost Husky Fast. He's pretty good, too. 39 yards. We're wondering, where's Najee? He didn't really have to do much. He had a lot of big holes, had a lot of good gains. That made it 35-6, and Auburn fans knew this thing was going to be rough. It was close your eyes a lot of times, and this was really, really, okay, make the pain stop. Yes. Mechie, again, 42 points. Wow.
Unbelievable at that point, 42-6, and Alabama offensively, defensively, hitting on all cylinders. Bo Nix did get in the end zone, kind of in garbage time there, but Alabama wins it 42-13. And what a night from Mac Jones, the Heisman leader currently. 5 touchdowns, over 300 yards in the air. What?
Ho-hum, 18 of 26. All those missed incompletions you talked about in the first couple of drives. Do you know 5 touchdowns ties Tua Tagovailoa for most touchdowns in an Iron Bowl? This is the same guy. Remember last year, this week, you could say Mac Jones lost the Iron Bowl last year. 2 pick sixes. Everybody's upset with him. He had a lot of good plays in that game. But he may have lost that game last year. To see what he did with, yes, a lot of talent around him. And I know Alabama fans hate when people say, yeah, he's got talent around him. You still got to make the throws. Yeah, and it's not like when you're going to wide open windows. You got to make the throws, and he makes them.
He arguably had more talent around him last year at this time when he took over the starting quarterback position for Tua. But my point is he has experience now under his belt. He got thrown into that spot last year when Tua went down with the injury. Now he has experience, and he's building every single game. It's like, okay, when is Mac Jones going to have an off game? He's yet to do it. He's been fantastic week in and week out and continues to roll under Steve Sarkisian's offensive plan.
You can talk about so many playmakers on this team on offense for years and years and years. You know who the most consistent one has been by far for 4 years? It's wide receiver Devontae Smith. How many times are we going to say this guy's been on the back burner and deserves to be out in front? Drew Carter live out there outside of Bryant-Denny Stadium. Drew, you were in there for the game. You saw once again how electric Devontae Smith was.
Well, Chris, it felt like every time you looked up from your seat, Devontae Smith was catching another pass or another touchdown. 7 for 172 and 2 more scores for Devontae Smith today, up to 35 career touchdown receptions, which is, like you mentioned, already a touchdown record in the SEC, and he continues to add to that total. He played another great game today against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and actually asked him post-game, where does this rank among your best career games? And he said, I don't know, I'm just competing, trying to help the team win. He's been doing that for 4 years now. Remember his freshman season, caught the game winner in the national championship against Georgia. Here he is a few years later, still arguably the best wide receiver in America. This is the 4th highest yardage total of his career with 171 yards. It's not even in the top 3. 8th career multi-touchdown game. And like I said, he's now up to 35 career receiving touchdowns in his illustrious Alabama career. We're getting to the point now, guys, where we have to start talking about Devontae Smith as one of the best players in program history. Now he's done it in an Iron Bowl as well. Another phenomenal game for Devontae Smith here today. We'll go back to you in the studio.
Mac Jones gets the Heisman glory, and quarterbacks usually do. That's fine. Devontae Smith is as good a player, as he said, anywhere in the country. Would be nice for him to get a little bit of look maybe sometime in the next month. All right, coming up on the postgame show, Gus Malzahn knew there was trouble from the very beginning. We have Gus's press conference coming up next.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Okay, nobody is going to question that Alabama was the better team on the field today, but you could point to a moment early, actually at the end of the first half, where Auburn really just destroyed any momentum they had. You knew Seth Williams knew how big and detrimental that was. That's why, because it was 21-3. That could have been a 21-10 game.
Yep.
Bo Nix knows that's a missed opportunity. And what happens? Malachi Moore,
the pick right there when Auburn was actually getting a little bit of momentum offensively. But to that point, Brees, I mean, in the first half, Auburn really, really struggled to protect Bo Nix. His jersey looked like that for most of the first half. Took a couple sacks early on, a couple tackles for loss, and Auburn offensively really couldn't get anything going. That pick there, just painful. And really, Seth Williams, in my opinion, is an elite wide receiver. And that right there is a routine catch for anybody, but especially for Seth Williams. So to miss that, I mean, really things just not going well for Gus Malzahn today.
You can point to the score being 42-13 and say that doesn't matter at all. Who cares if he dropped one touchdown? Don't underestimate how motivation in a locker room at halftime can mean everything. We have no idea if it's a two-score game what Auburn would do coming out of the locker room in the second half. They could have punched Alabama in the mouth, gotten lucky, gotten a turnover, gotten a touchdown. All of a sudden, it's a one-score game. Instead, that one-score game is 3 scores. And then at the start of the third quarter, it's 4 scores. And it snowballs all the way around. Point to whatever you want in any rivalry game. You get the breaks, you win games. That's why you lose when you don't get the breaks, and that's one right there.
Yeah, and you just said motivation, but I would also say momentum throughout a game. To have that bit of momentum, a Seth Williams touchdown there to make it a 1-score, 2-score game, it would be huge for Auburn. And I really think what's frustrating for the Tigers right now is that it seems like they're still looking for their identity offensively. How can that be the case this many weeks into the season that, run the ball, throw the ball, these slant routes, I mean, they really can't get anything going consistently. And that's got to be frustrating for Gus Malzahn, for Chad Morris, for Bo Nix, and just truly for the entire program.
And we're not at the beginning of the year. Yeah, the Iron Bowl is being played 3 games earlier than it's supposed to be, but we're still 8-9 games into a schedule. You're right about that. And I think Gus Malzahn certainly knows that. That's why at his post-game press conference, didn't really have a whole lot to say about how his team looked on the field.
First of all, congratulations to Alabama. Bottom line, they were the better team tonight. You look at the first quarter and we came out flat. And, you can't come out flat against a team like that on the road. The first half, we really didn't do anything in all 3 phases to create any kind of momentum. We did have an opportunity for the touchdown that we dropped, but in halftime we just said, hey, let's come in, let's get off to a good start. And if you look at the whole deal, I think the explosive plays is what stands out to me. When they got inside our 40-yard line, when we got inside their 40-yard line, we kicked field goals, and we got sacked, and we had a long field goal on 1. But our guys, I told them I am proud of their fight. They kept fighting. They handled themselves with character in a very tough spot. For that, I'm very proud of our team. Give Alabama credit. They're a very, very talented team. We knew that, but still, we came in here with the mindset that we wanted to win the game. But to beat a team like that on the road, you got to make plays. We didn't do that. We didn't play our best. It's obvious, and I think they played very well. Questions?
If you have a question, please put it in the chat. And also, it's being recorded, broadcast quality. That'll be in the SEC portal in a minute. If you have a question, just please put it in the chat. First one is from Tom Green.
Gus, it seems like every time you guys got near the 30-yard line, the offense kind of stalled out and had to settle for a couple field goals. Just what happened when you guys got in scoring range there?
A few times we shot ourselves in the foot. I think we went backwards a couple times, had a couple opportunities. But that's the name of the game. And, when you get in the red zone, you got to score touchdowns against the number 1 team in the country on the road. We didn't do that. And, that the frustrating thing for me is we never really got close enough to apply any pressure on them. And, they could play loose really the entire game.
Next question is from Jordan Hill.
Gus, we talked about Devontae Smith leading into this game, and he had a few big plays. That 66-yard touchdown that was their first. Just how big was his play against the secondary? Given
we've done really good against top receivers in our league, and they got us on a little something. We had a little miscommunication between two of our guys, and he busted out, wide open down the middle of the field for a touchdown. And he's a dynamic player. There's no doubt he did a very good job on the perimeter with some of their bubble game too. But, you know, we up to this game, we did a good job on main receivers.
Question from Gianna Hahn.
Hey guys, following up on that, what did you see all the other Alabama players that got involved in the receiving game and how your secondary matched up with them?
That got involved in what?
In the receiving game, so the other receivers, the tight end.
Yeah, I mean they got talented receivers, and we knew that, you know, we had to apply pressure on the quarterback, and a couple of times we were close to getting him, but, you know, give him credit, he was very accurate, and he threw some very good balls for explosive plays.
If you have a question for Coach Malzahn, if you'll listen.
I'm just going to say I need
Jason Caldwell.
I'll be right back. Gus, when you got down 14-0, had, I guess, 3rd and 3 down there, were any thought process into giving yourself 2 downs to try to get a touchdown that early on?
Yeah, there was. We did think about going for it there. I just think sometimes you just got to, especially early in the game, putting points on the board, getting a little momentum. That was really our thought. Up to that point, you know, I thought our defense was doing a solid job. But, yeah, there was some talk about it, but at the time felt like the best thing to do was get points on the board.
Okay, next question is from Justin Ferguson.
Hey guys, when the offense has done well these last few games, y'all been able to run the ball. Obviously, we weren't able to do that as well today. Do you have a reason for that? And two, how much did that hurt the offense as a whole?
Yeah, you're exactly right. We didn't run the football very effective, and you know when we run the football, we're a good offense. We weren't able to do that consistently, and that was tough. I mean, we had some new guys in, but you got to give them credit. They're pretty stout up front, but that was a factor, you know, today.
Question from Jordan Hill.
Gus, this is kind of an unusual situation with the fact there's 2 SEC games now for you guys after the Iron Bowl. Just how important is it for this team to kind of shake this off and get ready for the next 2 weeks?
That's what we talked about in the locker room. I mean, you got to be big boys. You got to take it like a man. They got after us. They whipped us. But we've got 2 games left. This is an unusual season, obviously. You know, we'll need to rebound. We'll need to rebound like we did earlier in the season. And it's a grind, but that's just part of it. And playing a really good team next week at home, it'll be good to get back home and then try to get some of our guys healed up.
Next question is from Mark Murphy.
It looked like early in the game you guys didn't have very good field position. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, they got after us on special teams too. You know, their kickoff team, you know, especially the first half, kept us in the hole. We didn't get past the 20. Had some bad field position. Had a really tough. We had an explosive, like a 30-play quarterback draw that got called back. That was extremely tough, and just like it felt like that first half, you know, everything was kind of uphill.
Next question from Brian Matthews.
Yes, Coach, thank you for speaking to us. Wanted to ask you about Tank Bigsby. How healthy was he coming in, and what does it say about his toughness that he was able to go out there?
Yeah, I mean, we had, you know, him and Brodarius both are 2 guys that, you know, they practiced a little bit on Thursday. It was a game time decision. They showed a lot of guts and heart, and they gave it their all. But obviously, you can see Tank, he's not close to 100%. And Brodarius, you know, wasn't able to go in the second half. But and then DJ got banged up in the first quarter too, and wasn't able to return. So, you know, we'll need to get held up this next week.
That's all the questions I see in the chat. So, Coach, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, to put into context, 25-point spread, they were right around that spread. So it's not fair to go ahead and say, because you know where I'm going with this, okay, Gus Malzahn's future, what is it at Auburn? Because this is the way the game was supposed to go.
No, this is the Iron Bowl.
I know, no, but it's the way the game's supposed to go.
Yeah, well, according to Vegas, not according to Auburn fans, though.
But Vegas knows something. That's why everybody says that.
Yeah, Vegas knows that Auburn's offense is trash. That's what Vegas knows. They know they have 0 consistency, and they haven't for years. And that week in and week out, they struggle to put points on the board. Yes, maybe against teams that are not that talented. But at the end of the day, Auburn fans are sitting at home not even wanting to hear what Gus Malzahn has to say after this loss. A 30-point loss in the Iron Bowl is completely unacceptable to every single fan throughout this entire state that puts on orange and blue.
Since we've already gone there, then, let me completely repose the question then, okay? Gus Malzahn, does he deserve to be at Auburn next year? Because we said the same thing 4 years ago in 2016. He saved his job in 2017, got that big 7-year extension. 2018 was a disaster, saved his job again in 2019. there's no saving this year. You can't say a win over a hapless LSU team is going to save somebody's job. Does he deserve to coach another year? I understand everything you're saying right there, and they deserve to be feeling that way, the Auburn fans. I think the only fair thing to do is forget about 2020, give him a fresh start if he wants to be at Auburn next year, and then maybe next year is the judgment year. Because this year, I think it would be safe to say throw it out because of what happened all summer long with the pandemic.
Well, I mean, with it being a COVID year, that's difficult. And I'm never going to sit up here, as I'm a coach's wife, I'm not going to sit here and call for coaches' heads. I think that's a difficult thing to do. I've been on the opposite side of that, and it affects a lot of people and a lot of families. I will say I understand the frustrations from Auburn fans. Gus Malzahn is frustrated. I think he's a fantastic coach and a good play caller, but they're not getting it done. Something is not working there right now, and he knows that. So I understand the frustrations. I'm not going to call for his head. It's a COVID year, like you said, but already two losses. They beat a really bad LSU team, but some fans will be happy with that because it was a rivalry win. But, I mean, at what point is the Iron Bowl going to happen? People are going to feel good about Auburn going into the game and say, we can win this game convincingly, because Alabama does it all the time. But how long has it been since Auburn's gone to the Iron Bowl and we go, Auburn's going to win this game?
Let's bring in Drew Carter to continue this conversation, because, Drew, it's easy to be an Auburn fan and say we want to be Alabama. We want to have five stars every year. They're not Alabama. You can maybe say Clemson is Alabama, maybe Ohio State's Alabama too. Auburn has a Nick Saban problem. They don't have a Gus Malzahn problem.
You're right.
Auburn can compete with whoever they want outside of Alabama. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm not totally sure what you really want from Gus Malzahn at this point, because you're going to call for every SEC coach's head, because everyone's gotten crushed by Alabama this season. The Crimson Tide have quite literally rolled through the entire conference this season. But going back to what Gus was saying, I mean, the reason they couldn't have any success today is because they couldn't run the ball. I mean, we've been talking about this all year long. They averaged below 3 yards per carry in this game. They really had the running game rolling when they won 3 games in a row. Now you don't have Tank Bigsby at 100%. The freshman, he did suit up and he played. But if he were fully healthy, who knows? Maybe Auburn can establish a bit of a run game. But at this point, guys, Alabama is just up here and the rest of the SEC is down here. Auburn won the Iron Bowl last year. Let's not forget that. Gus Malzahn has beaten Nick Saban 3 times as a head coach. Only Les Miles can say he's done that. Are we really going to kill Gus Malzahn today after his team lost like everyone else has against Alabama? I don't really think that's fair.
This entire debate we're having between the three of us is the best example of why sports are so awesome, Drew. It's because we love having passion and emotion and showing our opinions and giving that. And that's something you can say about the Iron Bowl because it means so much to people. And with all the bad going on around in our world right now, this is something fun to talk about.
I think that the frustration doesn't come with just tonight, though. And I'm speaking from, years of watching this team and seeing what these fans feel and how these fans feel, and seeing Gus Malzahn go up there after, big losses, whether it be the Iron Bowl or Georgia or LSU, and say similar things every single year. And I think that's where the frustration lies. It's not just in a 29-point Iron Bowl loss today.
Auburn has a lot going for them in their program. Facilities, they're in a great area, in a great conference. They have a lot of money that we know of. They can get good coaches. Now, it's a matter of do they think Gus Malzahn is their good coach, or do they want another good coach, and does Gus even want to be there? That's a question clearly for another day, and we'll certainly have it, and I know the people at Auburn will have it as well. We have more to get to here on our postgame show, including the big things happening around the country and history being made up in Nashville. Wait till you see this. It's coming up next.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Taking a live look out at Bryant-Denny Stadium as fans are leaving the stadium after a big 29-point win by Alabama over Auburn in the Iron Bowl. A lot of happy fans headed out of Bryant-Denny and home. Well, just a couple weeks of college football season remain before conference championships and then the playoffs, of course, and quite a few storylines for today's big 3 things. We begin with Vanderbilt kicker Sarah Fuller. The senior became the first woman to play in a Power 5 football game today. Just great stuff. She delivered the opening kickoff in the second half of the Vanderbilt game against Missouri. Fuller booted a squib kick exactly as it was designed, according to Vandy head coach Derek Mason. Fuller is the goalkeeper for the Commodores women's soccer team, who just won an SEC title. Great stuff there. All right, big thing in number 2 comes from the Big Ten. Ohio State's game against Illinois, scheduled for today, was canceled due to COVID-19 and contact tracing within the Buckeyes program. OSU is hoping to play next week's game against Michigan State. If they do not, they will not have enough conference games to be eligible to play in the Big Ten title game. Buckeyes head coach Ryan Day was among the positive COVID tests in the program. And our final big thing, even with Nick Saban in isolation today, his daughter Kristen still made good on their game day tradition. She drove to Coach Saban's house to deliver his game day penny. Kristen said she had to leave it on the windowsill while waving to her parents from outside. She added that Coach looked awesome in his full suit and tie. Of course, we saw that in the post-game comments from Coach Saban. Well, much more to come here on the post-game show. A crazy atmosphere, as always, when it comes to this Iron Bowl rivalry. We'll have more on that coming up. Stay with us.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday postgame, presented by Pepsi.
So the 85th Iron Bowl is in the books. Alabama dominant in all facets of the game against Auburn, 42-13, and it really was not even that close after about 10 minutes of the game. And, you know, despite restrictions on going into the game, only 20% can go, the rest of those fans have to find a way to enjoy and have memories of their Iron Bowl this year, and they did exactly that.
Absolutely grateful just to be here and just to be able to see these kids do what they love to do. And
the energy still seems to be here. It's just not as much. So hopefully that still translates to the field and we get a W out of there.
Oh, very thankful because, like you said, we didn't know we'd be here at this point.
Yeah, very blessed to attend the game. SEC, there's nothing like it.
It's really a feeling I can't describe. It's really it's different, right? I feel like this place should be full, and to have such a limited crowd, you know, you feel for everybody that wants to be here.
To me, it's just not as many people. It's not as crowded, so it's easy to get in and that sort of thing. But it's still the Iron Bowl.
Even though it's not the same, it's a different year. It's still gonna be special because it always is.
A lot has been made all year long about reduced seating across the entire SEC. As we bring Drew Carter in, Drew, you were there for the atmosphere, so you would know better than anybody would. I've been impressed across the entire SEC, not just Alabama. The fact that you're losing about 70,000 fans, it still feels like it's a fun atmosphere inside the game, too.
Yeah, Chris, it was still pretty electric in there, and I've thought the same thing that you did ever since week 1 when we were at Jordan-Hare Stadium. I've been very impressed by all of these SEC fan bases. We saw Auburn bring it at home, and now we've seen Alabama bring it as well. It was about 20% capacity inside Bryant-Denny Stadium, but it could be 1% capacity. If they're playing Auburn, it's going to be pretty loud here in Tuscaloosa, and we saw that firsthand today. And speaking of the difference between Alabama and Auburn fans today, I think really where it came through is that there were just so many fewer Auburn fans because such a larger portion of the fans at Bryant-Denny today were students. And so it felt like it was about 95-5 in terms of Crimson Tide versus Tigers, which if you've been to an Iron Bowl before, you know is not normal. Really, the only Auburn fans I saw today were in the friends and family section for the visitors. And of course, they didn't have a whole lot to cheer about. Crimson Tide fans leave Bryant-Denny Stadium very happy. And so do the players, even though it might have been kind of strange without their head coach on the sidelines.
You know, before the game, of course, we were excited, and it kind of sucked to not have Coach there, but you know, we had to do it for ourselves and for him. So you know, that's just kind of what we told each other. You know, we got to go out there. This is our team, regardless. And like I said, we got to go out there and execute whatever his game plan was, and that's what we did.
Yeah, basically the same thing. We just took it as motivation, you know, just to go play for him, knowing he's being sick with the COVID, so. We just took that as motivation, just to step up and lead as a team while he's not here.
And those players, even though they didn't have their head coach on the sideline, they had a lot of support from the stands. Again, only 20% full here at Bryant-Denny Stadium, but very loud throughout. And the moment that stands out to me in the fourth quarter, Dixieland Delight felt like the stadium was about 100% full. Going to the Auburn side, though, are Tigers fans missing Malik Willis right now. He's having a good season at Liberty. Coming up next, our Twitter mailbag on the postgame show and some fans dropping some hot takes. Don't miss it.
Watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday postgame, presented by Pepsi.
You didn't think we were going to go an entire Iron Bowl show and not do Twitter mailbag, Simone. How dare we?
We have to, of course. Let's check in with Zach Sprayberry. He tweets out, Malik Willis is in an Auburn uni. Sounds pretty good right about now. Never mind, Gus ran him off. Obviously, Malik
Before
Willis,
you go on,
no.
I'm going to sit back. I'm going to give you the floor. I'm going to tee this one up for you. About 2.5 inches tall there on the fairway. Your big 460cc driver. Way away, my friend.
Here's what I'll say. Okay, I don't think that Bo Nix is a bad quarterback. I think Bo Nix doesn't have a lot of people, isn't getting the help that he needs right now, especially when it comes to protection, okay? So Malik Willis, in a different system, at a different level of football, let's not forget that, at Liberty, is doing well, is making huge plays. They were undefeated until a recent loss. They went like 8-0 or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. But, I mean, that's like apples and oranges because Malik Willis and Bo Nix are actually very similar quarterbacks.
When you have nowhere to go but up, it's very fair to say, okay, what could somebody else do?
Sure.
Bo Nix can make plays. We saw it throughout his entire freshman year, and he's done it this year too. But what would be the harm in putting in Malik Willis if he was still on this team?
Yeah.
Who knows? He could light a spark, and we've seen that on many teams across the country. Not going to win national championships with a backup quarterback, but they'll go on and win some games that they didn't think they were going to win. I would have been fascinated to see if Malik Willis could have been on this team and if they would have looked better, especially running the football.
Yeah, I think that there have been times throughout the season, like we saw at one point at South Carolina, where Bo showed some frustration out there on the field. And I think that plugging someone else in there for a play or two or for a series or two can often, like you said, give the offense give some help, give them a different look at times, which is sometimes very, very helpful. And we've seen that work in Gus Malzahn's systems in the past before.
It wouldn't have mattered today against Alabama. We can say that much. And, of course, playing without their head coach, Nick Saban, we knew he was at his home pacing back and forth, and the fans knew that one too.
Yes, they definitely did. May Gillum takes to the Twitter world and says, Nick Saban is at home fuming. I'm not sure at what about, but I just know that he is upset. That fan obviously knows Nick Saban pretty well because here's what he had to say after the game.
2 questions. First, what were the circumstances when you were yelling at the TV?
When did you see me yell at the TV?
Oh, at the beginning in your opening statement, you mentioned yelling.
I think I did yell at the TV a couple times today. A couple times when we made some mistakes in coverage. A couple times when we missed some tackles. A couple times when Mac didn't throw the ball to the guy I thought he should have thrown it to. So I guess it was more than a couple.
I'm trying to do the math right now in my head. The last time Nick Saban watched a football game on a Saturday at home, 1972, 73. I'm serious.
It's been
a grad assistant every other year that you're trying to be a coach going up the ladder, early 70s.
Who knows? It had to have been a very, very long time ago. But I was sitting there watching the game and thinking, Alabama's playing so well, but I know Nick Saban is at home unhappy with something. Just like that tweet from May Gillum said, there is something that he is going to be frustrated with. And he did mention as well, they didn't finish quite the way that he wanted to. But listen, that's all a part of the process. That is what makes Nick Saban one of the best, if not the best, at what he does.
You think Nick Saban's mad when they beat Western Carolina 62-3, and he's really upset why it wasn't better? Imagine what he's doing at home when he has no control over his team whatsoever. Really missed a chance to get a camera on Nick Saban. Not going to be a next time, so who knows? Maybe there will be a next time. Who knows? Okay, coming up on our post-game show, you know, UAB was supposed to play last week. Didn't happen, but what are the odds they can make up that game against Southern Miss and have a proper send-off at Legion Field? It's coming up next.
Watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Well, UAB football had yet another cancellation this past week as Southern Miss had to cancel their matchup, the last home game for the Blazers, on Friday because of COVID-19. And we bring in the man who knows everything about Blazers football, AL.com's Evan Dudley. And Evan, what is the mindset of this Blazers program right now? They have not played since October 31st.
I think right now they're just wanting to play football. Hopefully they can play football. They have one game scheduled in 2 weeks against Ross in Houston. Now that they are working on hopefully trying to get a game scheduled for next week. Right now, from what I hear, they're waiting to hear something from UTEP at this point, but nothing's been concrete. But hopefully we'll hear something this weekend, because I would imagine that would have to be scheduled by the end of this weekend, going into game week next week.
So, Evan, how exactly would that work? Would the game be at home? Would they get one last hurrah at Legion Field? How would that work for Bill Clark's game?
The way it looks right now, since it was originally scheduled to be at UTEP, it would probably still be at UTEP, although it would be played at, I believe it was Grande Communications Stadium in Midland, Texas. They had moved it to a high school stadium at that point. Not really a big difference when considering Texas high school stadiums are pretty large in and of themselves. But if they are able to reschedule that game, it looks to be that it will be on the road. So probably will not be a last hoorah at Legion Field, unfortunately, unless something else changes and they're able to get a team scheduled at home other than UTEP.
UAB 4-3 on the season. How does this impact their ability to play for a Conference USA title? Are they even still in the mix? Tell us exactly how that could work out if possible.
The scenario for that is very interesting at this point. You look at their conference record; they're 2-1. Now with Conference USA, their rules are you have to be within 2 games of the league average of conference games played. So we're looking at the next 3 weeks, how many conference games will actually be played to give the actual average. But if it's somewhere between 4 and 6, the Blazers would be eligible to play in the conference title game. And I believe at that point, with a win over Rice, they would have the winning percentage to qualify for the title game, because that's how they're going to be kind of deciding this is winning percentage, since no one's really going to have the same number of conference games played this season. So if they get a win over Rice, there is still a possibility without an extra game scheduled. But it just really determines how many games are played within Conference USA these next 3 weeks.
What has the message been from Bill Clark through all of this? Obviously, we're just happy to be playing college football, but I'm sure this is frustrating for a team that has won a conference title, divisional title, and to now kind of be hanging in limbo and not really knowing what the future is going to look like.
It has been frustrating, considering that they were, even in August, they were very set on playing a 12-game schedule. That never came to pass with Old Dominion dropping out. So they were riding 11 games going into the season, and they were able to play every one of them up until the Rice game was postponed until the end of the season. But they still was able to play about 3 games after that Rice game was originally scheduled. So it's just, I think it's more frustrating on their end because it happened at the back stretch of the season when they were really wanting to get these games in, especially when you have 2 home games canceled, which would have been the last 2 games at Legion Field before moving to Protective Stadium next season.
All right, AL.com's Evan Dudley, we appreciate your time. Hoping that the Blazers can play a game in addition to this last Rice game. We will see maybe an announcement coming in the next couple of days. Guys, stay right here. We have more to come after the break.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Hey, remember when Alabama's defense was a big question mark on this team, when some Crimson Tide fans weren't sure that Pete Golding was the guy to coordinate the defense? Those questions have been put to bed lately, especially today in a 42-13 win over Auburn in the Iron Bowl. Doing some quick math here, over the last 18 quarters for the Crimson Tide defense, ever since halftime against Georgia, they have allowed 33 total points, an average of 7.3 points per game. Today might have been their best performance. 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 3 takeaways, all tied for a season high. The Alabama defense wreaking havoc today against the Auburn offense, and Bo Nix looked like he was seeing ghosts out there.
we did keep fighting, and even though the scoreboard wasn't in our favor, we just continued to try to move the ball and to try to go down and score. And we did that at the end of the game. But I'm just proud with the way our guys fought, for sure. I think they did a good job of making us have long drives, and because of that, we had to settle for some field goals. But like you said, we did move the ball at times. We just couldn't get anything really going. Of course, this one hurts. I mean, it is what it is. You never want to lose, especially to your rival. And I mean, we just have to get back and get going and put this behind us and have a positive mentality going into this week.
That's Bo Nix's first career Iron Bowl loss. He won it last year, played a phenomenal game for Auburn, that one on the Plains. But going back to Alabama's defense, mentioned the 3 takeaways today. One of them an interception from Malachi Moore, the former Hewitt-Trussville standout. He's got 3 picks this season. Last freshman to have 3 picks in a season for Alabama, go back to 2015. Minkah Fitzpatrick, Marlon Humphrey, and Ronnie Harrison. Good company for Malachi Moore right now. So we know that Alabama certainly in the hunt for the college football playoff. One conference might be kissing its chances goodbye. That would be the Pac-12. You got to see the highlights from Oregon versus Oregon State. That plus more games from around the country coming up next on the Postgame Show.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Maybe the most exciting thing for Alabama fans after this Iron Bowl is this. The road to the national championship clearly goes through the Crimson Tide. They are a solid #1 in the country right now. And you could beg to argue that even if they lose to Florida, a big if in the SEC title, they would still get in. But when you look at the first ranking from last week, you're saying, wait a minute, doesn't one play number 4? We got to play Ohio State in the semifinal. The same Ohio State team who everybody says is so good, but we may have some issues with Ohio State. The fact that they might not play a game next week would make them ineligible for the Big Ten title game. That would make the Big Ten in a massive, massive mess, kind of like the Pac-12 last night, because what happened to Oregon? They have been known as the one team in the Pac-12 who maybe has the best chance at the playoff. Well, their biggest rival in what they call the Civil War just dashed their hopes. Oregon State late in the game, under a minute, all they needed was that 1-yard touchdown, and they outlast the Ducks. Big time win, 41-38 for the Beavers. Oregon can kiss their playoff hopes goodbye. One team was looking really good for the playoff, even if they lose the ACC title game to Clemson, would be Notre Dame. They're #2 in that first playoff ranking. They got a bit of a scare from North Carolina early. You know the Irish have to take care of business and win every game going into the ACC title to have a chance, and they did exactly that. They basically ran away with it in the second half last night. 31-17 was the final there. Back to Clemson. You know Trevor Lawrence has not played a game in 5 weeks. 5. He was out for a couple of weeks with COVID. They had another bye. They had more COVID issues. And here they were today against Pittsburgh. And a flea flicker, he doesn't even need it, because Trevor Lawrence is that good. They had no problems with Pitt at all. And when Travis Etienne is doing whatever he wants, Trevor Lawrence can do it too. 52-17 was the final. Clemson and Notre Dame are on a collision course for the ACC title December 19th. In the Big Ten, if Ohio State cannot win it, what about Northwestern? They're going in. They're 5-0 against a Michigan State team that's supposed to lie down, but they did anything but. Old Sparty had the lead throughout the entire game before Northwestern took the lead late of 2017. But Michigan State came back. They hunkered down. They forced turnovers. And get this, Northwestern now, their chances of a Big Ten title, an outside chance of making the playoff, are gone. 29-20. That is bizarre. Back here in the SEC, I mentioned Florida and that title game with Alabama. The Gators still got to take care of business against the Kentucky team, who's much better than a lot of people give them credit for. But this punt return from Kadarius Toney basically set the tone for the entire second half. Florida may have been scared early on, but it didn't matter late, and Kyle Trask was modest this time. Only 3 touchdowns. What's wrong with him? 4 or 5's been his normal there. Final score there, 34-10 for Florida. Staying in the SEC, this game just went final a moment ago. Everybody wants to see what's going to go on with Ole Miss and Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl with Lane Kiffin and Michael Leach. Well, they did not disappoint, folks. Ole Miss and the Bulldogs went back and forth, back and forth. As maligned as State has been lately, that was the nail in the coffin for them. They played a good game, put up 24 points, but Ole Miss wins it in the end. 31-24 was the final. In the Big 12, this one was yesterday as well. It was senior day for Texas. They've been all over the place under Tom Herman. Senior day for Sam Ehlinger, their quarterback, and his career can be summed up in a lot of ways. Texas is back. They're not back. They are back. They lose a big game. They fall out of the top 25. They were trying to win big against Iowa State, number 13 in the country, but Iowa State came back late. Texas had a lead 20-10, and the Cyclones scored 13 unanswered to win it 23-20. Texas now has 3 losses on the season. All right, that's looking around the country at college football this week. Back here in the SEC, everyone was impressed with the way Steve Sarkisian handled things on the field for the Tide. We give him our grade coming up next.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
So Nick Saban watched the Iron Bowl from home today after testing positive for COVID-19. We found out about that on Wednesday. And this is the SEC protocol for people who test positive and how to get back. It's going to be at least a 10-day isolation period, Brees, from the start of from when they test positive.
Which was Wednesday. You can make the assumption he's back for the game next week against LSU on Saturday. That's not official yet. We're just making that assumption based on the map. And of course, he will not have to test for 90 days and will not have to be part of contact tracing during that time period because he just got COVID-19. So Saban will be fine with COVID-19 throughout the rest of the college football season. And in his place, Steve Sarkisian, everybody made so much about this. I think, to be honest with you, Simone, everybody in the media talks more about this than it should be because this team, no matter if Nick Saban's on the sideline, the plays are still the same. Sarkisian did exactly what he's done all year long. The defense looked the exact same way. The only difference was that Nick Saban wasn't running around getting everyone jacked up and motivated and making sure they're doing small fundamental things. Everything else was the same, but Sark did good, so give him the credit.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Brees, is that games are not won on Saturdays. Games are won throughout the entire year, and that is what Nick Saban does best. He gets these guys prepared mentally and physically, so when they play on Saturdays, they win ball games. But it's the lead up to the game, it's everything else that goes into actually playing on a field, and that's why you know Nick Saban gets it done. So there or not there, of course, is a big impact on the program, and we in the media like to talk about it. For the players, it was, business as usual.
You say games are won during the week. You know where they're also won? Every coach will tell you this. They're won on 3 or 4 big plays in a game. The big touchdowns to Devontae Smith, the drop ball by Seth Williams. Those are all the big plays that win games. It's not Steve Sarkisian being the guy who has the main headset on and calling the plays. That's just the way it is. And when you have Mac Jones on your team and he's throwing dimes the way he was, good luck to any defense out there. The Mac attack, they've been calling him. Drew Carter will join us next on the postgame show to look further into Mac Jones' dissection of that Auburn defense.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Last year in the Iron Bowl, Mac Jones put up some big numbers, but the two that everyone remembered, 2 pick sixes that allowed the Tigers to score on defense and ultimately win the game 48-45. This year, pretty different for Jones. The tour continues where Mac Jones torches every SEC defense he faces. Today, 300-plus yards, 5 touchdowns, which ties an Iron Bowl record set by Tua Tagovailoa, and no interceptions for Mac Jones. And after the game, he and his favorite target, wideout Devontae Smith, who was our player of the game, discussed yet another sterling performance by the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a good call. We double moved again, and it worked. But I couldn't really think about all that. While I'm in there, I just kind of threw it up to Smitty. Guy's wide open, makes a great play. And to have a double move, you have to have great protection from your line and running back. So pretty easy on my part.
When I seen the coverage, I kind of figured it was going to be a touchdown. And I was just like, I know Mac going to put it where it needs to be. And I knew the offensive line was going to give him the time to put it there.
Well, Jones heating up for sure on what has turned into a chilly night here in Tuscaloosa, and some folks took it as a bit of a slight from his opponent in this game, Bo Nix, when he said he does a good job managing games. Well, Mac Jones was anything but a game manager today again. 18 for 26, 300-plus yards, and 5 touchdowns for Alabama. One of the best quarterbacks in Crimson Tide history, that would be Joe Namath. We go one-on-one with Broadway Joe. That's coming up next on our CBS 42 College Football Saturday postgame.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday postgame, presented by Pepsi.
We know many great quarterbacks have come through Tuscaloosa over the last century, helping the Tide conquer college football. Maybe the most recognized name of all, even after all these years, is Joe Namath. Our Jack Royer caught up with Broadway Joe this week. Here is their exclusive conversation.
An Alabama football great, an NFL great. Bear Bryant called him the most athletic player he's ever coached. Joe Namath, Broadway Joe, is with us this morning on Iron Bowl week. Mr. Namath, it's so good to have you with us, and good to see you as always. We always love talking to you. We always love hearing your Iron Bowl memories and thoughts on the state of things.
Well, first of all, Jack, thanks for having me on. Secondly, thank you for mentioning Coach Bryant's name, because you bring back a lot of wonderful memories of a great man for me and our team. And I certainly have memories of the 4 years that our team, my class and classes competed against that bunch from down there at Auburn.
When you think back on your time at the Capstone and your time in the NFL, obviously Coach Saban spent time in both places. A lot of coaches have gone back and forth from college to pro sports. What in your career is the time you'd go back and do again if you could?
What in my career? Well, you know, the first thing comes to mind, and Coach Bryant told our freshman class, the first meeting we had with him, in the basement of the athletic department, where we had our meetings in the dorm. He said, we're going to remember the tough times, the ones we lost, more than we're going to remember the wins, because we're going to do a lot of winning. And the tough ones, the ones you lose, it's going to stick in your craw for the rest of your lives. And he's right about that. But I do think of the people more than anything. I remember some games, all of the games dang near, but it's the teammates that we had and our coaching staff. I think of those folks.
I know you mentioned the people are most important. When you go back to campus now, this is a vague, open-ended question, can you believe how much it's changed? It seems it changes every 5 minutes to me almost.
Jack, you're right, man. I would stay in Tuscaloosa in between the semesters and the summertime and work. I worked out at the paper mill, Gulf States, you know, and I got a couple of jobs around town, and it was a wonderful town then. I thought it was pretty big coming from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. It was pretty big then. Today, it's just absolutely beautiful. It's grown tremendously, but yet it still has that community feeling, that togetherness there on campus and around town. So Tuscaloosa is a great town, and the Crimson Tide with that capstone is just wonderful.
What do you want people to identify most when they hear Broadway Joe, Joe Namath? You've done a lot of charity work. You have had storied careers in both college and pro sports. When people think Joe Namath, what do you want them to first have in their heads? Friendship, love,
Respect. Those are things that I received when I went to the University of Alabama from Pennsylvania, and it's a home for me. And I have a lot of love and respect and friendship for the folks there in Tuscaloosa and all over the state, man. I think former teammates, Galen McCullough down there, Dolphin, and some guys all over. It's just the friendship, the love never has gone away, and that's what I cherish most.
Well, Mr. Namath, thank you for being on with us today. We appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me, Jack, and I have to say, roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Guys, back to you.
He's getting an extra roll tide tonight for Alabama, that's for sure. And Joe played a lot of Iron Bowls, which means he knows this place very well. Legion Field will be saying goodbye next year to UAB as the home stadium. We give one final goodbye ourselves to the Legion Field coming up next.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Welcome back into College Football Saturday, the post-game show. Well, Birmingham's 47,000-seat protective stadium is still under construction, but everything is on pace to be finished just in time for the start of next college football season. It will be the new home of the UAB Blazers. But Legion Field is where they have been for many years, and it's seen a lot throughout its 93-year history. The first game ever was Howard College, now Samford, beating Birmingham Southern 9-0. Since then, the old Gray Lady has hosted hundreds of Alabama home games up to the turn of the century. 28 seasons of UAB football as well. 7 failed Birmingham pro football teams, 4 different bowl games, a few NFL preseason games, and of course, 47 Iron Bowls. I caught up with some of the big names that once called Legion Field home.
Legion Field is stocked. It is the most partisan example of football fever you can ever hope to see.
For nearly a century, Legion Field has been a staple in the Birmingham skyline.
Wisniewski to kick it off, and we are underway from Birmingham.
The old Gray Lady holds decades of sports history in the South, dating back to 1927.
For a lot of people like me growing up around here, Legion Field was an epic place to go to. It was a palace. It was the dream, because if you played football, you'd play big high school football games there. You would dream of playing for Alabama or Auburn back then, because Auburn would play home games there. Alabama would play all their big games there.
When I was growing up, Legion Field was what the upper deck said. And it said across the front panel of the upper deck, football capital of the South. And for me, it was really just the football capital of my world.
Former Auburn offensive lineman Cole Kublik has a special perspective on Legion Field as a young boy, high school and college athlete, and broadcaster.
I mean, that was where big football happened in my life. And growing up, Alabama, Tennessee was there. The Iron Bowl was there every year. So that was my football capital. To be able to finally just go actually play in a game there, knowing it was going to be the last Iron Bowl that you played there, that was pretty special.
10, first and goal, Auburn from the 6 of Alabama. And I'm telling you, the Crimson Tide faithful are sitting here stunned at Legion Field.
In 1998, the 63rd Iron Bowl was played at Legion Field. It was the final meeting between Alabama and Auburn in Birmingham. Longtime Auburn Athletics Director David Housel says the rivalry game hasn't been the same since.
But as Coach Dye said, on every play was a big one. If one team held the other one to 3 or 4 yards, everybody stood up and cheered. It was the Iron Bowl when it was in Birmingham. When it's in Auburn, it's the Auburn-Alabama game. When it's in Tuscaloosa, it's the Alabama-Auburn game. They don't make no iron in Lee County.
That should do it.
Former Alabama defensive lineman and Tide head coach in the 90s, Mike Dubose, has fond memories of his time on Graymont Avenue.
As a player, we were fortunate we won every game except one. That one was a big loss, though. And then as a coach, we had some good wins. Legion Field means an awful lot to the University of Alabama. It has for a long, long time. Most of the big games were always played in Legion Field because of the pageantry of it.
After the Iron Bowl left Birmingham, Legion Field continued to be an essential part of college and professional football. The annual Magic City Classic between Alabama A&M and Alabama State, conference championships and yearly bowl games, the city's various professional football teams, and beginning in 1991, the home field for UAB.
You can do a lot of checks in the positive category that Bill Clark has done as a head coach at UAB. One of the things he did that is near the top of the list is that he made Legion Field a positive. It had been a negative for every coach before him. but you saw the result of that with that long home win streak. And so it'll go out as a positive memory for UAB fans because Bill Clark made it into something the guys enjoyed playing there.
A new chapter for the Blazers and football in Birmingham is set to kick off in 2021 as Protective Stadium inches closer to completion.
I think for UAB, they realized early on they need their own stadium. They were talking about on campus. I think where they put it's perfect because it's right there in the entertainment district. But, it's going to be sad to move out of Legion. The old great lady, man, she's meant a lot to Birmingham. It is the football capital of the South, and a lot of great memories that I know myself, my teammates, and really just a ton of college football players, broadcasters, fans alike share for so many years.
Enjoyed putting that story together and talking to all those former players and coaches. So what is next for Legion Field? Well, that's something that's already in the works. City leaders started the push this week to make it a national landmark, which could bring in additional funding for renovations for the old gray lady. We have more information on that, CBS42.com. Well, still ahead on the post-game show, one guy who knows quite a bit about the Iron Bowl right there, the legend, Bear Bryant. We have more on a guy who was recruited by Bryant. That's coming up next. Stay with us.
I expect nothing.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
It's still the best argument Alabama fans love to have with each other. Who is the greatest of all time? Is it Nick Saban or Bear Bryant? 232 wins for Bear Bryant in his career, 25 years in Tuscaloosa, of course. That's 19 Iron Bowl victories. Nick Saban only 13 years, so he's 6 years behind them going into today, 163 wins. Both coaches have 6 national titles, all 6 for the Bear. We're here at Alabama. Saban had 1 at LSU. It is a debate that keeps on going on, and Drew Carter back with us live. Drew, you can tell us more than anybody because you talked to somebody who's made this his living, talking about Bear Bryant and Nick Saban.
Yeah, Chris, that's right. It's Lars Anderson, who not only is a professor at Alabama, not only hosts a radio show in Birmingham, he also quite literally wrote the book on that debate you were just talking about between Bear Bryant and Nick Saban. Maybe not just for who's the greatest coach in Alabama history, but who's the greatest coach in college football history. It's called Chasing the Bear. I highly recommend it, and I talked with him earlier this week.
I would say that Nick is a little sort of colder than Coach Bryant. When you go and see Nick speak at different functions, he's kind of always looking at his watch, trying to see, when can I get out of here? You always feel like he's looking at the door, wants to head out. Whereas Bryant just loved to, sit down and have a cocktail and regale his friends with stories from his past. And he was a real people person. And you wouldn't necessarily describe Nick as that. But oddly, Bryant, especially toward the middle and latter part of his career, wasn't that interested in recruiting. He left that mainly to his assistants, whereas Nick is actively involved in recruiting. I mean, he always says, and he's told me this several times when we've chatted over the years, that it's all about the horse and not the jockey. Meaning you got to have the horses. And so he devotes part of every day to recruiting. And they have like a recruiting war room that is just off of Saban's office. And what transpires in that war room really is the lifeblood of the entire program, where Bryant believed that he could take Alabama kids and toughen them.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, Lars, but I don't believe in this book you answer the question, who is the greatest coach of all time? Did you state your opinion in this book?
I do not state my opinion in the book.
Okay, and I think you're smart for doing that, but since I've got you here, I have to ask, who do you think is the greatest coach of all time?
They were equally great for their time periods. But I do think, I would say Nick Saban. Simply because there is more parity than ever in college football. There's not just 3 or 4 teams that have a legitimate chance to win the national championship every year. And just the quality of competition is so much higher than it was. And Nick's been able to do it in a shorter time period. at Alabama, and then also winning the one at LSU. And I do think, again, it's just a matter of when, not if, Nick gets that 7th national title, which will just put him alone among the all-time greats.
All right, so you already saw a bit of a tale of the tape between Nick Saban and Bear Bryant. As far as the Iron Bowl is concerned, Saban coached teams are now 9-5 against Auburn. Bear Bryant was 19-6 during his 25 years at the University of Alabama. And to get more info on Bear Bryant, let's go to a guy who was recruited by the legendary coach. Chris Brees talked with Steve Flowers.
Well, Drew, it's a perfect segue going from Bear Bryant's greatest memories to a man who knew him so well. Steve Flowers, our political reporter, but you're so much more than that. And I'm so glad we got you on finally to talk about college football. My fault, nobody else's. I'm so sorry for that. We were talking in the pregame show about how Steve Flowers met Bear Bryant. He was a walk-on for Alabama. Coach called him not very good, and the man was so blunt, and that's why you loved him so much. He didn't care what anybody thought. He said what was on his mind.
Well, let me correct that. I was not good enough to walk on. He just interviewed me, and he says, Flowers, are you any good? And I said, Coach, I'm really not. I just want to meet you and get your autograph. But he'd already become a national legend, a national celebrity. I think he'd won 3 or 4 national championships, won the conference championship, SEC 10 years in a row. He'd had a couple of lean years. He'd gotten lax in 69 and 70, my freshman and sophomore years at the university, which I was a student. I was never a football player. Let me clarify that. I was interviewed to be a possible walk-on.
But you can just say, hey, Bear Bryant wanted me to play. That's kind of cool.
Well, well, I could say that, I guess. But, I mean, he interviewed me to talk to him about walking on, being a tackling dummy. But having said that, Bryant was such a celebrity, Chris. People can't realize this. Saban's probably in the same boat now.
He's getting there.
But Bryant had won all the national championships. He was well known around the nation like a celebrity. And he had a real close friend named John McKay, who was a head coach at Southern Cal. They both were the top premier coaches in the college football, and they had become friends. Both of them had clinics. And Bryant would journey out to visit McKay once a year, and he was out there, and McKay and they were going to some famous Hollywood restaurant there on Rodeo Drive, and Bryant was sitting there having a cocktail probably, and McKay and he were having a nice lunch, and the maitre d' says had been approached by John Wayne, who was a famous movie star, and the back of the restaurant was there too. A lot of movie stars went to the same, frequentted that same restaurant.
To correct you, he was the famous movie star.
Yeah, John Wayne.
Talking about the late 60s, early 70s.
Oh, John Wayne was the great, he was, yeah, big time movie star, and still probably a legend. But Bryant and McKay were sitting there having their lunch and a nice visit, and the maitre d' says, and John Wayne asked the maitre d', isn't that Coach Bryant from Alabama sitting up there with, and that Coach McKay? Wayne was telling the maitre d'. And I think people that era, John Wayne and Bryant, had a couple of pops during lunch, and they both were loose, and McKay said, well, tell him I'd like to meet him. But Wayne says, tell Bryant I want to meet him. So the maitre d' goes there and taps Coach Bryant on the shoulder and says, Coach Bryant, I'm sorry to bother you, but John Wayne would like to meet you. Can you come over to his table? And Bryant said, well, heck, tell him to come over and see me. I'm more famous than he is. I gave him an autograph if he wants it.
And so did John Wayne hear that?
I don't know if he did or not, but that's the story. I think maybe he did. You know, that's how famous Bryant was. He knew he was famous.
You mentioned John McKay, and you were actually a freshman in that game in 1970 when they say they integrated Alabama football. And Bear Bryant had so many different eras and different changes throughout his years in his 6 championships. That was one. Was that one of the lowest moments, you think, in his career?
You know, there's a movie about that. I don't know if you've seen that movie. It's well documented on ESPN and other stations. It was the fall of 1969, and Bryant had orchestrated a game. He had planned that game with McKay. This intertwines into politics because the gist of that ball game is that it did more for integration than Martin Luther King did for Alabama, because Bryant knew that. Bryant knew that he needed to recruit black athletes if he was going to compete. And Southern Cal had half their team with black athletes, and Alabama was still in a segregated mode. They would not integrate, and he only recruit white players, which put him at a real handicap. And that's why he was falling behind. So Bryant was wise enough to orchestrate that ball game in 1969. It was the first ball game of the year. Southern Cal came into Birmingham. All of our games were played in Legion Field at that time. All of Alabama's major games were played here in Legion Field. And Birmingham, I was a freshman in the stands. I was not a player. I was a student and active in a fraternity and having a good time. And
you were living the proper college life.
I actually had a date with a girl who was...
Oh, here we go.
Was from Baltimore, Maryland, who was daddy was the owner of the Baltimore Colts football team.
Oh.
She knew more about football than by herself, and I never had much of it. Anyway, she and I...
It didn't work out.
No, but we were friends still.
Her loss, not yours.
Anyway, we sat there. She knew everything about football. They came into that game, Chris, and they beat us so badly. The score was 42-14.
Oh, yeah.
But it was worse than that. I mean, McKay called off the horses. They had a running back named Sam Cunningham.
He was the guy.
Sam the Bam Cunningham. He ran over. We had little old skinny white guys who were 6'1", 175, and their running backs were 6'2", 230. They were like Najee Harris. I mean, they back then. I mean, they were running all over us. I mean, they ran us out of Legion Field. But what that did is it showed Alabamians, look, we may like to be segregated, but we like Alabama football better than we do segregation. It integrated the state. Bryant was able to go after, and in that spring, he was able to recruit John Mitchell from Mobile, the first black defensive end who came from Mobile.
So much is made nowadays of how different is college football in 2020 than it was when Bear Bryant was the icon. But I would argue that a lot of it stays the same when it comes to culture.
Chris,
what do you think?
You nailed it. I think you still have the same basic principles in this regard. Bryant knew the fact that he wanted to, when he got on top, the way to stay on top was to get the best players. And Saban understands that. They understand recruiting is 75 to 80% of it. Some say 90%. It's simple. If you get the best players in the country, you got the best football team.
And the only thing that's changed is the way you recruit. But the culture of recruiting has never changed.
I would say this, that Saban has the same advantage that Bryant had in this regard. They're the premier program in college football program in America, and they give a real deference to those players. At that time, Bryant was ahead of the curve. He had a dormitory called Paul Bryant Hall that his players lived in exclusively. It was a Taj Mahal. They were treated like kings. They were segregated from the rest of the campus, and they were given the premier meals, the premier dietitians, the premier weight trainers, even back in the 1960s. Saban does that now.
It's the modern-day football facility. It's the modern-day Mal Moore facility.
Exactly. But nobody else in the country did it. Bryant was ahead of the curve. Saban is really ahead of the curve because they've got so much money down there that they can do what they want to, and they can not only get the best players, they can convince them, look, you come here, we're going to give you your own dietitian, your own weight trainer, we're going to put you in the best program in America, you're going to be in the pros. And they know that. And Bryant was in the same mode. Pro football is more prominent now than it was then. These kids come out as five-star athletes and sign with Alabama with the idea that's the best place to go to get to pro football. They just want to play for the best team when Bryant was there.
If people haven't noticed by now, Steve Flowers is not a man who only talks politics. You take off the tie, you got the Roll Tide shirt on. Steve, we got to have you on more often because this was a fascinating conversation.
I love it. Let's do it more often.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And both Coach Saban and Brian agreed it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and Joes, and the Jimmies and the Joes on Bama were dominant tonight. What's ahead for both Alabama and Auburn? We'll tell you next.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
It was big news yesterday. Alabama-LSU was postponed on November 14th, but it was not canceled because they've changed the SEC schedule. That means Bama-LSU is next week, December 5th. They have moved Alabama-Arkansas to what we assume will be the next week on December 12th, getting all 10 games in for every SEC team. Good job, Greg Sankey.
Meanwhile, what's ahead for Auburn? Take a look here. Auburn now taking on Texas A&M. The Tigers have done pretty well against Jimbo and the boys. 3 straight wins against the Aggies. Back in 2019, Auburn got that win 28-20 over Texas A&M. So definitely an improved Texas A&M team, I would say, from last year, a team that's played well, that's in the conversation for the college football playoffs. So not going to be an easy one for Gus Malzahn's crew.
Well, and that's why if you're Auburn, this is a great opportunity to forget about what happened today in Tuscaloosa and beat what's supposed to be a really good playoff caliber team. And you know, Auburn and A&M have had a really, really great rivalry lately. A lot of close games. The road teams won a lot. I think you can throw that away this year in specific. I think Auburn A&M next week. It might be the early game on CBS. Bama LSU will be 7 o'clock here on CBS 42. There will be a doubleheader game at 2:30. It's between Florida, Tennessee, and Texas A&M and Auburn. If Auburn A&M's that game, Auburn can get right back and maybe forget about this game today. Maybe not going to, but it helps a little bit.
But like you said, you got to have a short memory. We definitely learned that this year, having back-to-back SEC games every single year or every single week, you really can't sit there and be too excited about a win, too down about a loss. You got to move on.
It's been a long day and a fun day, and we're going to wrap it up coming up next on the Postgame Show. We'll be right back.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Just because it means so much to everybody, showing you the final score one more time. Alabama fans, you're welcome. Auburn fans, we're sorry. Better luck next year, maybe. As we wrap up a final Iron Bowl postgame show, a full 2 hours. We had a great time, and we love the passion of the rivalry. That's why this is such an enjoyable thing for all of us to do on CBS 42.
And at the end of the day, I think we also have to be grateful that we made it to this point in the season. We got to enjoy an Iron Bowl game, even in limited capacity at Bryant-Denny Stadium. But at the end of the day, college football in 2020, a little bit of normalcy, I appreciate it.
The most lopsided Iron Bowl since 2012. Alabama wins 42-13. See you on the wrap-up show at 10:35.